Have you ever walked up to your seed trays, looked down, and felt your heart completely sink? Your once hopeful little green sprouts are now lying flat on the soil, looking pale, weak, and utterly lifeless. It is a terrible feeling. You might think they are completely ruined and ready for the compost bin, but hold on a second. What if I told you there is a way to reverse this disaster? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are talking about saving your garden from the brink of disaster. I'm going to share a fascinating 2,000-year-old secret that can completely revive your weak and dying seedlings in just 48 hours. Yes, you heard that right. 48 hours. This sounds impossible, right? It goes against everything we are taught about slow plant recovery. Most people believe that once a fragile seedling flops over, it is the end of the line. But that is a modern myth. We are going to uncover a forgotten natural technique that triggers a miraculous bounce back. So, tell me in the comments right now, have you ever thrown away a whole tray of sick seedlings out of frustration? Do not be shy, we have all been there. Stick around because you will never have to do that again. To understand this incredible method, we have to travel back in time. Long before modern garden centers and liquid chemical fertilizers existed, ancient farmers in Rome and Greece faced the exact same problems we do today. They relied entirely on their crops for survival. A failed batch of seedlings did not just mean a disappointing hobby garden, it meant literal starvation. Because the stakes were so incredibly high, they spent generations closely observing nature. They noticed something fascinating about certain trees growing near rivers and streams. These trees, specifically the willow trees, could take massive amounts of damage and still rapidly sprout new roots and branches. The ancients began steeping branches from these trees in water and using that water on their weakest crops. It worked like absolute magic. Today, modern science tells us exactly why this ancient brew was so effective. We now know it contains high levels of a natural compound called salicylic acid. You might recognize that name because it is the main ingredient in aspirin. Yes, ancient farmers were literally giving their sick plants a form of natural aspirin to cure their stress and force them to grow strong roots. Let us start by looking closely at the first signs of trouble in your indoor garden. You know exactly what I am talking about. You walk over to your seed trays with your morning coffee, and your heart sinks. Instead of vibrant, sturdy little green soldiers standing at attention, you see fragile, bending stems. They look like they are exhausted, laying their little leaves against the wet soil. The color is off, too. It is not that bright, hopeful green anymore. It is a washed-out, pale yellowish green that screams for help. This is a crucial moment for any gardener. Your first instinct might be to panic and act quickly. But what is really happening inside that tiny stem? The plant has lost its turgor pressure. This is the internal water pressure that keeps it standing upright. It is exactly like a water balloon that is slowly leaking. The tiny roots are suffocating, and the root hairs have stopped absorbing nutrients. But here is the good news. This is exactly where our 2,000-year-old rescue method comes into play. Imagine this wilted plant as a tired marathon runner who just hit a brick wall. They do not need to be pushed harder, they need a very specific type of energy drink to get back on their feet. The most common myth is that giving them a massive dose of chemical fertilizer right now will fix the problem. That is completely false. Doing that will only burn whatever tiny root structure they have left and kill them faster. So let us debunk another massive myth right away. When people see a drooping plant, their immediate reaction is to grab the watering can. We assume that drooping always means the plant is desperately thirsty. But with weak seedlings, this is almost always the exact opposite of the truth. Overwatering is the #1 killer of young indoor plants. When you pour more water onto soil that is already damp, You are essentially drowning the roots. Roots need oxygen just as much as they need water. Imagine trying to breathe while someone is holding a wet blanket over your face. That is what wet, heavy potting soil does to delicate new roots. The roots start to rot, turning brown and mushy instead of crisp and white. This causes the stem to weaken at the soil line, a condition literally called damping off. Our ancient Roman farmers understood this balance perfectly. They knew that medicine was useless if the patient could not breathe. So, before we even think about applying our secret remedy, you have to check the moisture level. Stick your finger into the soil. If it feels wet and heavy, step away from the watering can immediately. We need to create an environment where the roots are hungry enough to drink up our magic potion. Now, let us talk about sourcing the core ingredient for our ancient plant medicine. We need willow branches. If you have a weeping willow in your yard, or any type of willow growing near a local pond or creek, you have struck gold. Spring is the absolute best time to harvest this because the branches are full of fresh, active sap. You want to look for the new growth. These are the thin, flexible branches that are usually green or yellowish on the outside. But what if you live in the middle of a concrete jungle and cannot find a single willow tree? Do not worry, I have a backup plan for you. You can actually use plain, uncoated aspirin from your medicine cabinet, since it is a synthetic version of the same natural chemical. However, making it the authentic, ancient way is much more effective because the natural willow water also contains unique rooting hormones that synthetic pills just do not have. Imagine the difference between drinking a fresh organic fruit smoothie versus taking a cheap vitamin C pill. The fresh ingredients provide a whole spectrum of healing compounds, so take a walk outside, find a beautiful willow tree, and snip a few small pencil-thin branches. You do not need a lot. Just a handful of twigs is enough to create gallons of life-saving plant medicine. Once you have your willow twigs, the preparation process is surprisingly simple, but you have to do it exactly right. The goal here is to extract as much of that natural salicylic acid and rooting hormone as possible. First, you need to remove all the leaves from the twigs. We only want the woody stems. Next, you need a pair of sharp pruning shears or heavy scissors. Cut the twigs into very small pieces, about 1 inch long. Why do we cut them so small? It is all about surface area. The more wood you expose to the water, the more medicine will leach out into your final brew. Imagine you are making a cup of tea. If you just throw a whole, uncrushed tea leaf into cold water, nothing happens. But if you chop that tea leaf up and steep it properly, you get a rich, dark drink. It is the exact same principle here. After you have chopped up your twigs, place them into a large glass jar or a bucket. Do not use metal containers if you can avoid it, as some metals can react with the natural acids over time. Fill the jar until it is about 1/3 full of your chopped twigs. You are now looking at the raw materials of an ancient botanical laboratory. This simple jar of sticks is about to become the most powerful rescue remedy your garden has ever seen. Here is where another huge myth needs to be completely destroyed. A lot of modern gardening blogs will tell you to pour boiling hot water over the willow twigs to extract the juice faster. Please, do not do this. Boiling water is a modern mistake. Think about it. Ancient farmers were not dragging heavy cauldrons of boiling water out to their fields to save their seedlings. Boiling water actually destroys the delicate rooting hormones and natural enzymes found in the willow bark. It literally cooks the medicine, rendering it completely useless. Instead, we are going to use the cold water steeping method, just like they did 2,000 years ago. Fill your glass jar with room temperature or slightly lukewarm water. You want to use filtered water or rainwater if possible. Tap water often contains chlorine and chloramine, which can kill the beneficial bacteria we want to encourage. If you only have tap water, fill a bucket and let it sit uncovered for 24 hours before using it so the harsh chemicals can evaporate. Once your jar is filled with good, clean water, Put a lid on it and place it in a cool, dark place. Now comes the hardest part of the entire process. You have to wait. It takes time for the water to draw out the plant hormones. You will need to let your willow mixture steep for at least 24 to 48 hours. You will know it is ready when the water changes color. It should look like a very weak, pale yellow tea. When you take the lid off, it might have a faint, earthy smell. That is the smell of natural plant medicine ready to go to work. Now we are going to add one more ancient ingredient to supercharge this mixture. This is something the Greeks used to protect plant wounds from infection. We are going to add exactly one small drop of raw, natural honey to every cup of willow water you plan to use. There is a common myth that adding honey to soil will attract millions of ants and bugs. While a giant spoonful might do that, one tiny drop dissolved in water will not. What it will do is provide a microscopic amount of complex carbohydrates and act as a powerful natural antibacterial agent. When seedlings are weak, they are highly susceptible to fungal infections. The honey acts like a protective shield around the delicate roots, while the willow water stimulates new growth. Imagine putting antibacterial ointment on a scraped knee. It stops the bad bacteria so the body can focus on healing itself. Before we apply our magic brew, we need to prep the sick seedlings. You cannot just dump the liquid over the top of the pot and hope for the best. Remember, these little plants are in critical condition. Their stems are weak and their roots are struggling to breathe. If you pour heavy water directly onto the top of the soil, the physical weight of the water can crush the fragile stems into the dirt, killing them instantly. It is like throwing a heavy bucket of water on a delicate sandcastle. Instead, we are going to use the bottom watering technique. Take a toothpick or a small wooden skewer and very gently poke a few shallow holes into the top crust of the soil. Do not dig deep. You just want to break up the hard surface so air can flow down. Then, take your pot or seed tray and place it inside a larger, shallow tray. You are going to pour your prepared willow and honey water into the bottom tray, not over the plants. The dry soil in the seedling pots will naturally wick the moisture up from the bottom, exactly like a dry sponge soaking up a spill. This ensures the roots get the medicine exactly where they need it, at the very bottom, encouraging them to grow downwards and strong. Let the pots sit in the shallow tray of willow water for about 30 minutes. You will see the top of the soil slowly turn dark as the moisture rises up. Once the top is slightly damp, take the pots out of the water tray immediately. Never leave them sitting in a puddle of water for hours. Remember, we want damp soil, not a muddy swamp. Now, let us talk about where to put your recovering patients. This leads us to another massive mistake people make. When a plant looks sick, the instinct is to give it as much bright, blazing sunshine as possible. People think sunlight equals energy, so more sunlight equals more energy. That is a fatal myth for a weak plant. Placing a dying seedling in direct, intense sunlight will bake it alive. The plant does not have the root system to pull up enough water to cool its leaves down. Imagine making someone run a sprint in the desert sun while they have a severe flu. It would be a disaster. Your sick seedlings need rest. Place them in a warm spot with bright but strictly indirect light. A spot near a window with a sheer curtain is absolutely perfect. They need just enough light to know it is daytime, but not enough to cause any additional heat stress. Temperature is your next secret weapon during this critical 48-hour window. Your seedlings are currently in a state of shock. Cold drafts from a window or blasts of dry, hot air from a heating vent will completely ruin the recovery process. You want to keep the room temperature steady and comfortably warm. Think about the temperature of a mild spring afternoon, right around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. If your house is chilly, you might want to use a seedling heat mat. However, if you use a mat, you must put a towel between the mat and the seed tray. You want gentle, soothing warmth radiating up into the soil, not a frying pan effect. This gentle bottom heat signals to the roots that it is time to wake up and start growing. Combined with the salicylic acid from the willow water, the warm soil acts as a powerful catalyst. It is like getting into a warm, comfortable bed when you are feeling sick. Your body finally relaxes, the shivering stops, and the healing process truly begins. This combination of ancient willow medicine, indirect light, and gentle warmth creates the absolute, perfect hospital environment for your struggling little plants. Now, let us talk about the invisible element that most indoor gardeners completely forget about: airflow. Stagnant, dead air is the enemy of all indoor plants, but it is an absolute death sentence for sick seedlings. When the air does not move, moisture builds up on the surface of the soil and under the leaves. This creates a breeding ground for deadly fungus and mold. Ancient farmers did not grow plants in sealed glass boxes. They grew them outdoors, where gentle breezes constantly stimulated the stems. We need to recreate that ancient breeze. I am not talking about aiming a giant box fan directly at your fragile plants. That would blow them over and dry them out. You want to place a very small, gentle fan in the same room, pointing away from the seedlings. You just want to keep the air in the room slowly circulating. Look closely at your plants. The tiny leaves should be barely vibrating. This microscopic movement forces the plant to build stronger cellulose in its stem. It is exactly like lifting very light weights to build muscle after an injury. This gentle stress, combined with our willow medicine, signals the plant to thicken its main stalk so it can stand tall again. Let us fast forward to the first 12 hours after the rescue treatment. You might stare at your plants and feel disappointed because nothing seems to be happening. Do not lose hope. The real magic is happening entirely underground, hidden from your eyes. The salicylic acid from the willow water has fully penetrated the root zone. It is currently triggering a massive hormonal response inside the plant. The roots are rapidly branching out, shooting microscopic white hairs into the soil to anchor themselves. The natural honey is fighting off any rot that was trying to take hold. Imagine an old car engine that has been sitting for years. You turn the key, and at first you just hear clicking. But deep inside, the oil is moving, the gears are shifting, and pressure is building. That is what is happening inside your seedling right now. During this 12-hour mark, resist the urge to touch them. Do not poke the soil, do not move the pots around, and absolutely do not add any more water. They are resting and rebuilding. Your only job right now is to keep the environment stable, keep the indirect light soft, keep the gentle breeze blowing, and let the ancient chemistry do its profound work in the dark soil. As we cross the 24-hour mark, you are going to witness something truly incredible. This is the moment the internal pressure stabilizes. The new root hairs have absorbed the water, and they are pumping it up into the stem. Look closely at the base of the seedlings. Those stems that were previously bending over and touching the dirt will begin to curve upward. They are fighting gravity and winning. The turgor pressure has returned. It is an amazing visual transformation. It looks exactly like someone inflating a long, skinny balloon. As the water fills the plant cells, the stems become rigid and strong again. You might also notice the leaves starting to unfold and spread out, reaching toward the indirect light. This is the surest sign that the plant has accepted the rescue treatment and is moving from survival mode back into growth mode. However, we have to debunk another myth here. Just because they are standing up does not mean they are fully cured. A lot of gardeners see this 24-hour improvement and immediately move the plants back to harsh sunlight or hit them with strong fertilizer. If you do that now, you will send them right back into extreme shock. At this stage, you might notice something else. Some of the lowest, oldest leaves on the seedling might look completely yellow or even brown and crispy. Human nature tells us to grab our scissors and snip those ugly leaves off to make the plant look prettier. Do not touch them. Let me explain why this pruning myth is so dangerous right now. Even though those yellow leaves look terrible, the plant is actively pulling remaining mobile nutrients out of them to fuel the new growth at the very top. The plant is recycling its own energy. If you cut those leaves off, you are stealing the plant's emergency food supply. Furthermore, every single cut you make is an open wound. The plant would have to waste precious energy trying to heal that wound instead of growing new roots. Imagine being recovering from a major surgery, and someone asks you to go donate blood. It makes absolutely no sense. Leave the ugly leaves alone. Eventually, when they are completely drained of nutrients, the plant will naturally drop them on its own. Right now, every ounce of energy must be focused on internal recovery and root expansion, not on looking like a perfect picture for a magazine. Now we approach the crucial 36-hour mark. This is when the color shift happens. Remember how pale and yellowish the seedlings looked at the beginning? Because the new roots are now fully functional thanks to the willow water, they are successfully absorbing microscopic trace minerals from the potting soil. This triggers the plant to restart chlorophyll production. Chlorophyll is the green pigment that allows plants to make food from light. If you look closely at the center of the plant, where the newest tiny leaves are forming, you will see a deep, vibrant, healthy green emerging. It is like watching a faded old painting get a fresh, glowing coat of varnish. The pale yellow is slowly being pushed out as the rich green spreads outward. This color change is your definitive proof that the photosynthesis engine is back online. The plant is no longer starving. It is finally making its own sugars again. At this point, the stems should feel surprisingly firm if you very gently brush your finger against them. They have transformed from limp noodles into sturdy little green pillars. The ancient Roman secret has completely altered the trajectory of their short lives. We have finally arrived at the 48-hour climax. Take a moment to really look at your seed trays. It is a completely different landscape compared to 2 days ago. The plants that were lying in the dirt, waiting to die, are now standing tall, bright green, and full of vigorous life. They have quite literally been resurrected. This 48-hour turnaround is why this 2,000-year-old method is so legendary. The combination of the natural rooting hormone from the willow bark, the protective antibacterial shield of the honey, and the perfectly controlled environment has pulled off a miracle. You have successfully reversed damping off, cured root shock, and saved your garden investment. Think about how much money and time you just saved by not having to buy new seeds and start the entire weeks-long process all over again. You have also gained a profound skill. You now understand plant anatomy and stress recovery better than 90% of casual gardeners. You did not just dump chemicals on a problem. You used a natural, organic, scientifically backed historical method to work with nature, rather than against it. This is true gardening mastery. But our journey is not quite over. Now that the 48-hour critical rescue window is finished, we have to talk about the transition phase. You cannot just take these newly revived plants and throw them outside in the wind and rain. They are out of intensive care, but they still need to go through physical therapy. Over the next week, you need to slowly introduce them back to their normal routine. Start by increasing their light exposure very gradually. Move them slightly closer to the window, or if you use grow lights, turn the intensity up by just 10%. Do this over a period of several days. If you notice any leaves curling or turning pale again, back off immediately. They will tell you if you are pushing them too hard. You should also continue to use the bottom watering method, but you no longer need to use the willow water every single time. Switch back to plain, room temperature water. The amazing thing about the willow water treatment is that the salicylic acid actually triggers a phenomenon called systemic acquired resistance. This means your seedlings now have a permanently boosted immune system, making them much tougher against future diseases. Let us address the topic of feeding them. You are probably wondering when you can finally give them some actual fertilizer to help them grow big. You must wait until you see at least 2 new, true leaves form at the top of the stem. True leaves are the ones that actually look like the mature plant leaves, not the simple round seed leaves they were born with. When those new leaves appear, it means the root system is finally robust enough to handle nitrogen. But even then, do not use a full-strength chemical fertilizer. That would be like drinking a heavy cream milkshake after a week-long fast. Your stomach would rebel. Instead, use a very gentle, organic liquid fertilizer, like a weak fish emulsion or a diluted kelp extract. Mix it at only 1/4 of the recommended strength on the bottle. Gently bottom water them with this weak solution. This will provide a slow, steady trickle of nutrients that the newly expanded root hairs can safely absorb without burning. Slow and steady is the ultimate secret to growing monster-sized productive plants from this point forward. I want to share a quick bonus tip regarding the willow water you made. You do not have to throw the leftover liquid away. This magic brew is incredibly versatile. If you have any older houseplants that are looking a little sad and droopy, you can give them a drink of this exact same mixture. It works wonders on established plants that are suffering from repotting shock or winter gloom. You can also use it when you are taking cuttings from your favorite plants. Instead of buying expensive synthetic rooting hormone powder from the garden center, simply soak your fresh cuttings in the willow water for a few hours before planting them in soil. The natural hormones will force the cutting to explode with new white roots. You have effectively created a free, infinite supply of organic rooting tonic right in your own kitchen. You can store the leftover willow water in a sealed jar in the refrigerator for about 2 months. Just make sure to let it warm up to room temperature before pouring it on any plants. Cold water straight from the fridge will shock warm soil and undo all your hard work. As you watch your revived seedlings grow stronger every single day, it is amazing to think about the history connecting you to the past. When you perform this simple rescue technique, you are participating in an agricultural tradition that spans millennia. The exact same natural chemistry that saved ancient wheat fields and olive groves has just saved your modern tomatoes and peppers. It proves that sometimes the most advanced solutions are not found in a laboratory, but in the careful observation of nature. The willow tree gracefully bends in the wind but never breaks, and it shares that incredible resilience with any plant lucky enough to receive its medicine. By ignoring the bad advice to overwater, overfeed, or bake sick plants in the sun, you have cracked the code of plant survival. You have learned to read the subtle signs of turgor pressure, root health, and light stress. You are no longer just a person who puts seeds in dirt. You have become a true caretaker of your indoor garden, equipped with knowledge that will last a lifetime. So the next time you see a tray of sad, bending seedlings, do not panic. Do not reach for the trash can. Take a deep breath and remember the power of the willow branch. Gather your materials, prepare your ancient brew, and carefully manage the light and temperature. Within 48 hours, you will witness the exact same botanical miracle that fascinated farmers 2,000 years ago. Your plants want to live. They have an incredible, built-in drive to survive and thrive. Sometimes they just need a tiny, natural push in the right direction. By mastering this single, powerful secret, you will dramatically increase your gardening success rate. You will grow stronger, healthier, and more productive plants than you ever thought possible. You will transform from a frustrated beginner into a confident, successful gardener who knows exactly how to handle a crisis. The power to heal your garden is literally growing right outside your door, waiting to be used. And there you have it. The incredible 48-hour turnaround is complete. What started as a tragic tray of dying, limp seedlings has been completely transformed into a vibrant, standing army of healthy green plants, all thanks to a simple 2,000-year-old secret. We have uncovered the magic of natural salicylic acid from willow branches, the protective power of raw honey, and the absolute importance of gentle airflow, correct temperature, and bottom watering. More importantly, we debunked the dangerous myths of overwatering, immediate fertilizing, and harsh sunlight that doom so many young plants. The significance of this method goes way beyond just saving a few tomatoes. It teaches us to observe our plants closely and trust the brilliant, resilient systems that nature has already perfected. You now have the ultimate emergency toolkit for your garden. If you loved discovering this forgotten historical hack, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up so we can share this knowledge with more struggling gardeners. I want to hear from you now. What kind of seedlings are you going to rescue using this willow water method? Drop a comment below and let us start a discussion. Thank you so much for watching, and happy, healthy gardening to you all.